So politics, we know, can have the power to sow division, including right here in Canada. But in the last several years, we have watched our neighbors in the U.S. confront some of the most divisive topics, at times changing the face of history. When people of a nation are divided, conflict can follow. We're used to watching this happen in other countries, but a new film imagines what civil war could look like next door.
Let me know if you want to try anything on.
I guess aware there's like a pretty huge civil war going on all across America.
We just try to stay out. With what we see on the news, seems like it's for the best.
Based in the future, Civil War follows a group of photojournalists who cover the front lines of a war that breaks out across America. The only person I wanted to talk to about this film was the director and the writer, Alex Garland, and he's with us this morning to tell us about Civil War. Welcome.
Thank you.
You could have told this story from many different perspectives, but you chose war correspondents, photojournalists in particular. Why?
Well, because I wanted to put journalists front and center. I'll make sure I don't get too political too early in the morning.
Go ahead.
You have a government which is set up with some checks and balances. All governments can get corrupt. Often many do. Things that protect you against that is journalists. And journalists have been under attack for a long time. They've been undermined, partly by social media, sometimes deliberately by politicians trying to protect their own interests, and sometimes even within the media by their own behavior. It can be a sort of combination. It's a complex picture, but the result is that something we need, in the same way we need doctors, we just need, has been eroded. And I thought I thought that was a problem. So I wanted to make them heroes and also show some of the consequences of populism and division.
Yeah, well, let's dig into it there. There's been a lot of discussion, first of all, online about the division between the Western forces, which is Texas and California, and the other alliances in this war. So a map has come out showing sort of how this civil war, where the lines would be divided. Here it is here. How did you choose, Alex, which states would be on which side?
Well, partly to deliberately stop people from being too lazy in their assumptions. One of the things about polarized politics is you immediately start carving the world up into one side or another, and that means right and wrong, and real politics and real life, actually, just between humans on a day-to-day basis, is more complicated than that. So I wanted to interrupt that easy thinking, but actually there's a political thought within it, which is in the States, you probably know, Texas, California, very different political positions represented in each state. In effect, what it's saying is they have a fascist president, and they have decided that fascism is a greater problem than their political differences. And then there's an implicit question after that, which is if you can't conceive that Texas and California could agree even over the problem of a fascist president, then what are you saying about your polarized position?
You do some really interesting things with subtlety in this film, like the shots of the flag, which no longer has all the stars that we're used to seeing it. There's an allusion there to the fact that the Canadian dollar is worth considerably more than the U.S. dollars. I know, we as Canadians appreciated that. We caught that. But while writing the script, were there certain images that came to your mind that we're going to see in the film? Were there certain scenes you knew you wanted to create?
I knew I wanted it to end with a sort of third act ground invasion of Washington, D.C.
That was
and so the
thrilling.
film kind of moves towards it. And then I wanted it to end with one of the journalists getting the iconic image of the conflict.
The other thing I want to ask you about is there are images, this is, I think, the thing that stayed with me the most. There are images of war that we are used to seeing in other countries. It is quite different to see them in U.S. locations, and I'm thinking particular, without giving too much away, there's a scene with mass graves, but we're looking at white-skinned people in clothes from the Gap or from the mall. We are not used to seeing that, and it was a really powerful device.
Well, the problem is, if we make an assumption that bad things belong in other countries, maybe for exactly the reasons you just said, we're making a huge mistake because it makes us feel immune and exceptionalized. And we're not immune, we're not exceptionalized. I come from Europe, and in where I come from, fascism grew straight out of democracy. And I think that the point is that the the sort of centrist form of government, which is checks and balances and journalists, is there to protect us from something. It's not like an accident. It's not like people thought, let's create this system of government. It sounds good. They were actually trying to defend all countries that adopt it against a specific threat. And the threat is extremism. And you arrive at extremism via populism and division. So erode those things literally at your peril, and nobody is immune. Otherwise, we wouldn't need the system of checks and balances and guards and things like that. So
did you create this film as a warning, as a wake-up call? What was it?
I think I was just really annoyed. I think it was just like, are you kidding? Because some of this stuff is really obvious. It's not like there's any prescience on my part about it at all. I wrote this 4 years ago.
Really?
Yeah, I wrote it
4 years ago?
Yeah, I wrote it 4 years ago, and I couldn't make it because of COVID. It was about 2 years where it's just impossible to put on a film of this scale, and so we had to wait. And all the stuff that's in the film worries about the consequences of corrupt, lying politicians, the erosion of systems of government, the erosions of law enforcement agencies, the erosion of journalists. We've been talking about this stuff for ages. And people have been worried about it for ages. And it's bipartisan, because you could be right-wing or left-wing or whatever wing. And as long as you weren't extremist, this could and should concern you.
Alex, I'm so glad that you were here to chat about this in person today. The film is called Civil War. It premieres in theaters on April the 12th.
Hey, thanks for watching. If you liked this, be sure to subscribe here, or you can check out more Your Morning videos right here.